Hi, Mayor. I have a question as it relates to spending. I'm wondering if you could help define what is the role of the First Lady in your administration, and how do we justify spending upwards of $80,000 to redecorate an office for her and staff in our current financial situation?
So the Cultural Center has always been a location for dignitaries. Every First Lady has had office space, there. Renovations for my office or any other office is standard procedure. Our commitment to invest in people is still our commitment.
Is there any concern about optics of spending $4,000 on a desk or $4,000 in club chairs at a time when the city is in this sort of budget hole?
Yeah, a desk is not going to, the purchase of a desk is not going to change the financial structural damage that has been in place for a very long time. So this is why we ask, and I mean this respectfully, we ask far more profound questions than that. We ask, how do we make sure that the structural damage that's been created over the course of decades, that we reroute the rivers, if you will, to make sure that it gets to the places where there's dry land. And that's what we're doing.
Respectfully, sir, the question wasn't necessarily about just the dollar amount, but about the optics of that. We just had a very contentious council meeting, so I'm just wondering if you're concerned about that optics.
So I've been mayor for 17 months, and you have a question about how I feel about optics? Just go back and review the tape. If I were to allow my leadership to be based on someone's opinion of me, it would be a derelict of duty. I never question my position to invest in people. I don't do this for optics. I do this to transform lives. The 30,000 young people that we're going to work to hire next summer, you know what the optics of those are? That 30,000 children actually have jobs. For the people that we are building affordable homes for, you know the optics of that? They actually have somewhere to lay their head. The optics of making sure that every single child has a social worker and a counselor in their school, and a librarian and a librarian, you know what the optics of those are? Is that children actually get what they deserve. And so if there's anything to optically pay attention to the investments on the west and south sides of Chicago.
I'd like to remind everyone that we are tight on time, and if we can keep it to one question. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor. So Alderman Conway is proposing that your administration and the city move the Greyhound bus station, which lease is expiring at the end of the month, I believe, to the migrant landing zone, which would move the station from his ward to Alderman Urban's ward. Wondering, what do you think of that proposal? Is that something that you and your administration is considering seriously?
I'm going to allow my Chief Operations Officer, John Robertson, who's been working on this from the very beginning, to respond to that question.
Thank you, Mayor. John Robertson, Chief Operating Officer for the City of Chicago. We have been in conversations over many weeks and many months, doing our due diligence around a number of different options. And so we have been in receipt of Alderman Conway's recommendation, and we will take a look at that as we take a look at all the options that we're considering to ensure that there's going to be intercity bus service here in the city of Chicago.
So is it being seriously considered as an option?
We're looking at all the options as he just expressed. Thank you.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey, how you doing?
So you and Alderman Villegas got in a little, looked like a heated discussion or just a long discussion. Later he told us he hopes that you turn to Alderman to help talk to Springfield and to help talk to Washington about getting funding. Is that something you're willing to do to work with?
We've already done that. I'm asking Alder to follow my lead and ask Springfield to do its part. That's actually where their attention and energy should be.
But
look,
to work more closely with them because they feel like...
We do work closely together. I mean, look, some of these individuals have been alders longer than I've been a politician. You know, so if they're waiting for me to get in office to fight for their communities, I don't want to sound judgmental. All I'm saying is that if there's any mayor that has credibility on fighting fighting for funding for our schools in Springfield, it's this one. Again, the first mayor to send their children to Chicago Public Schools, taught in our public school system, organized parents all over this city to fight for an elected representative school board, of which we now have, the first mayor to actually keep their promise to see that come into fruition, because I think it's important that we expand democracy. And so whether it's alders, state reps, state senators, all of us have to work together collectively to get our fair share from Washington, D.C. This election cycle is very critical to that. We've had great conversations with the state of Illinois around building this single shelter system. My chief of staff is here. The team has been working hard. There's some tentative, knock on plexiglass opportunities for us to build this single shelter system. So there's real collaboration that's happening, working with the county. I spoke with President Preckwinkle this morning. We're putting our heads together for the entire region, spoken to South suburban mayors, Western suburban mayors around how our region can benefit from more resources from Springfield. So this is not a new fight, right? There are some people who have been lagging along, and we just have to, help encourage them to utilize their voices to speak to their state reps, their state senators, because they do anyways, right? These alders speak to them about a number of things that they want to see in their respective wards. So it's not an unfamiliar relationship, and particularly, the alder that you just spoke of, he worked in Springfield. I mean, he knows that actually system quite well, and we rely on his institutional knowledge to think critically around how we can have strategic intervention to ensure that our city receives its just due.
Hi, Mayor.
Hey.
After the last council meeting, you said you would veto the ShotSpotter ordinance, and I'd be interested to know why your approach changed and what your thought process was.
Yeah, it's a good question, and thank you for that question, by the way. Look, I've said all along, and I think one of your colleagues mentioned this earlier, about, being collaborative. And that's actually not hard for me. Like, I want to work with people. I mean, I'm a middle child, so naturally my proclivity is to find consensus. But the reality of this is this particular resolution did not reinstate ShotSpotter. That's the misinformation that's out there. What it attempted to do is to give procurement authority to a separate body, which is illegal. So for us, in good faith, to continue to show that we're collaborative, we'll continue to do that with RFIs. And there's some great examples of technology that are coming through, even though that is not the ultimate goal in terms of our public safety plan, to just simply have the best technology. It's a full force of government approach. But again, the procurement rests within the executive branch. To take that outside the executive branch is a dangerous precedent, because could you imagine if each entity had the ability, regardless of the executive authority, to just go into procurement with any entity? I mean, you could have a second term with Donald Trump, and God knows we don't want that.
And back to the budget, you've said you're not prepared to accept a CPS budget that lays off teachers.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to accept a city budget that lays off city workers?
I don't want to do that either. And look, I don't. I know how city services are so critical to the people of Chicago. And so layoffs do affect city services, just like layoffs affect education. What's interesting, and thank you for that question, what's interesting about the way that question was framed is that when I talk about avoiding layoffs at CPS, the detractors of my administration, for whatever reason, cannot connect an adult in a building to the educational outcomes of a child. It's actually quite puerile, but disingenuous, because any cuts to workers will affect services, right? And so, look, I know we have to put all options on the table, and I am not, cuts would be quite dramatic and severe, and we're going to work to avoid that.
Hi, Mayor. You trusted this past board enough to appoint them. Why didn't you trust their decision not to fire Pedro Martinez and to take on that $300 million loan?
Well, this was really about the transition into, what I'm shepherding to a hybrid school board, right? And the reason why I'm just lifting that up is because this transition is critical, because it's never happened before. So there are some individuals that are in consideration that could remain if they choose or depending on the outcome of the election. The current board, the individuals that resigned, none of them ran and none of them had any interest of carrying over. As far as my trust, I did trust them to carry out our vision for evidence-based funding, special education, investing in our neighborhood schools, removing officers out of schools so that we can have restorative justice. And so they did their part, and I'm grateful for their leadership. But this is not about one individual. Every board will have the opportunity to evaluate the CEO, and they will have the ability to make a decision if they so choose.
But, you know, you call this a transition. Isn't that just spin? I mean, that's kind of like if I got dumped and then I said, I'm transitioning to being single. Like, the board resigned.
Well, I hope you
It doesn't
didn't.
feel like
I hope
a
you
plan.
didn't trigger anybody with that example. It's quite ominous, actually. I don't know if I follow your entire your logic.
I guess what I'm
there.
saying is
Well, try that one more time.
I guess you're saying this is a transition.
Yeah.
It feels like a way for you to spin this.
I see. So you're just making a comment that it feels like it. Okay. Well, thank you for your comment.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering if you can, you know, I don't know, clarify it somehow.
Clarify how you feel. I can't. I'm not going to clarify how you feel. In all due respect, I don't think that's my role to clarify your feelings.